As I prepared for today's message, I ran across an article by Janet Miller in Forbes magazine. It opened with the words of that great prophet, Ferris Bueller. Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. Janet goes on to say how easy it can be to get swept away in the fast lane and to forget and stop and show our appreciation for what we have. She says a life well lived is a life of gratitude and thankfulness. In her article, she goes on to describe 8 different ways to have more gratitude in her lives. And I'm going to highlight 3 of those today. The first, she says, is don't be picky. Appreciate everything. Gratitude, she says, doesn't reside only in those big things in life. There's plenty to be thankful for in the little things, too. I wonder, had Naaman had that piece of information, would he have been so irritated at the simplicity of what Elijah asked of him? Now, he might have moaned and groaned no matter what he was asked to do, but here was a man who had an expectation of what would be required. And it turns out to be wrong. Go figure. But instead of getting all upset about it, at once he understands this realization that God's grace is found in the simple as well as the grandeur. He humbly gives thanks for the blessings and grace he has received. Where do we find God's grace? Maybe it's in the smile of a passerby at the grocery store. Or maybe it is in the cold, clean water we get through our faucets. Or maybe it's waking up in the morning, in bed, with a roof over your head. Not sleeping outside under the stars on the ground. And maybe, just maybe, you find it in the bread and the wine we receive during Holy Communion. Something Janet in our Old Testament reading helps us to see is that if we're not looking for grace, we just might miss it, even if it surrounds us. Yet once we see it, know it, experience it, she says it's natural to want to give thanks for it. Another way she says we can add gratitude into our lives is to keep a gratitude journal. She says jotting down all these things or events in life, no matter how big or small, that we are grateful for, helps us look beyond those things or events in life that weigh us down. Maybe her inspiration for this practice comes out of Paul's letter to Timothy. Like Paul, I suspect Janet knows that in recounting those things for which we are grateful, it helps us to let go of those things that cause us concern. I wonder if that's why we stand and we share in the Nicene Creed every time we come together for worship. Or why each of our Eucharistic prayers reminds us each and every week of the depth of God's love for us. Each helps us to focus on where grace is found, enabling us to let go of the craziness of the world around us so that we might see, know, and experience God's grace as we approach the altar to humbly receive the Holy Sacrament. Having received grace, don't we return to our pews, giving thanks to God for the blessings that we have received? promising to try and live more fully lives worthy of the grace that we have received that surrounds us? How do we do that when we leave this place? Janet says, we volunteer. Or in the words that we've been using here the last couple months is we give of ourselves. Citing a University of Pennsylvania study, she highlights how volunteering, doing for others and not ourselves, is the single most reliable way to increase our well-being. Her bottom line, helping others helps us in return. In that, even if only in the moment, we realize the grace in our midst, and we then give thanks. It's in giving thanks that we acknowledge the blessings, the grace that we have been given. And as our gospel reading reveals, it is what makes us well. Well with God, well with one another, well with ourselves. Genuine gratitude cannot be faked. When we encounter grace, something inside us changes. Maybe not permanently, but over time, repeatedly encountering and recognizing grace, we experience a transformation here in our hearts, here in our minds. As this transformation takes place, we move beyond the repetitive and obligatory things and ways in which we live to a place where genuine joy is found in what we do and who we are. One example I came across describes this transformation in relationship to how and why we worship. It says, before grace transforms us, many of us come to worship because simply we've been told it's expected of us. Or there are some who come to worship in order to get something of value for the time they have invested. But as we come to realize the grace that surrounds us, that fills us as individuals, as a community, with a feeling of closeness to God and one another, we yearn then to feel that each and every time we walk through the doors of our church. And when we do, our natural reaction is to give thanks and praise. Knowing, like the man with leprosy in today's gospel, that it is given not because of what we do. Remember, that leper did not make it all the way to the priest before he was healed. It's given to us because of who we are, the beloved children of God. The more we come, the more we seek, the more we find. And the more we find, the more we realize we have to give thanks for. It is this same transformation that transforms a parish pledge drive, like the one we started last week, from simple fundraising to the glad gratitude of joyful givers. What we are able to give of ourselves, be it our time, our talents, our treasures, moves from being a weight that hangs around our necks to clouds that lift us up. Now, I know that sounds a little corny, but when we are able to live lives of gratitude in both our words and our actions, when we are able to give thanks and praise for things both big and small, the way we see life is different. Life is no longer just about us. It's about us. It's about all of us. Even those who are different than us. Who don't believe what we believe. Or who don't see life the way we see it. While we may never find agreement with them, it is still up to us to share with them and others the grace we know in our lives so that they may know it too. We express our gratitude for what we have received by giving it to others. No strings attached. No expectation of something in return. We give because we have been given. And we give out of what we have received. A lack of gratitude on our part does not inhibit God's grace. It only limits our ability to see it and recognize it. One commentary said that studies have shown that those who realize grace in their lives, who experience it, who strive to live lives of gratitude because of it, tend to live lives a little less stressfully, more hopefully, and with greater joy. It is my prayer that each of us will encounter God's grace in such a way that we are moved to give thanks and praise through our words and our actions to the one who gives freely to all who would receive, not to be enriched in and of ourselves, but in abundance, that we might share it with others. Amen.
Amen.